let's have a quick look at how we use variables and data types in our programs. Now, as you know, Abap has various data types built into the SAP system. We have data types that are already set up that we can make use of when we declare our variables. And these data types describe the kind of data that our data objects, our variables, hold. So when we talk about a data object, and we talk about data objects quite a bit in Abap objects, these are the variables, and a data object really helps describe the type of data we are holding in the variable a lot better than a standard data type would. And what I mean by this is we might have a data type of, let's see, numc8, which just means an 8-digit numeric character string. But the data object that makes use of this numc8 could be something like employee number. So when we define employee number as a variable, as a data object, it really helps describe what data is being held a lot better than the actual data type itself. And then when we talk about data types in general, in Abap, in SAP, we really have two sets of data types. We have complete data types and incomplete data types. Complete data types have a predefined fixed size with a specified format. And an example of this would be an integer, or maybe a float, or a string, and so on. So in Abap, an integer is a fixed size, a float is a fixed size, so is a string. I think a string can go up to something like 2 gigabytes in size. And as you can imagine, with something like that, it's useful for maybe importing files into memory that we can then process in Abap. Incomplete data types, on the other hand, do have a format specified, but the storage size does vary. When you use an incomplete data type to create your data objects, you have to specify the set size when you declare the variable. So for example, if we use a character string, the Abap data type C, we have to specify how big we want that variable to be. Now with the character string, there is a default of 1 character if we don't specify a size. But in general, we have to specify how large we want that variable to be. So here you can see a table of the different data types that we use in Abap. We start with the integer, and you can see that's a 4-byte whole number, and it goes up to 2.1 billion. Then we have a float. We have string, xstring, date, and time. These are complete data types with a fixed size already defined in the system. The incomplete data types are the ones in blue and bold. So these are the character string. We have to specify a size. The N, which is a numeric character string, same thing again. Byte sequence and packed numbers. And you'll see down here, if you're not familiar with packed numbers, they are very useful in our programs. With a packed number, the SAP system handles any calculations that we do with it. And what I mean by this is the Abap system itself carries out the rounding rather than the underlying operating system. So this is useful, I could just say, for rounding decimals and things like that for monetary fields. So we don't lose pennies here and there in our calculations. And you'll see, as I've put here on this slide, the packed number, some people get a bit confused with it. It's like a compressed number. And the actual size of the field is determined by the calculation you see here. So if I specify a size of 13, the field can actually hold 25 digits. So this would be 13 as the size, times 2 is 26, and then we take off 1 character for the sign, the positive or negative. So let's have a look at how we declare variables. Pretty straightforward, and you should be familiar with this. We start off with the data statement, then we specify our variable name, then we specify our type. We use type and then give the actual type, so integer and so on. Here's some examples. We have data, num1 is a variable name, then we're going to use a type I. So that just declares a normal integer. Next line, num2, type I, with a value of 5, and this just shows that we are initializing the integer with a specific value as soon as we declare it. Next, we have the data name, type C, and here, this is an incomplete data type, so we're having to specify the size. We're doing a size of 20, and then we're initializing it with a value of Pete. And as you can see, because it's a character string here, type C, we're having to put the contents within single quotes. Next down, we can use the like statement, and with the like, instead of specifying the actual type, we can use a built-in type in the system. So you can see here we define the name variable with a type C, length 20. So now we can create name2 to be exactly the same as name. And finally, just to go through decimal places and things like that, we have two data statements here. We have num3, type I, value 123, no decimals. But when we do specify a decimal, we have to put our value within quotes. Because remember, in Abap, we terminate a statement with the full stop, with the period. But if we do that without putting single quotes in our data statement here, the Abap syntax checker will throw an error and say you're terminating the statement too early, and we have the 66 left on the end. So when you're defining decimal places, use single quotes. Then finally, let's have a look. We have chain statements, and remember, with any statement in Abap, you can use what we call chaining statements together. So you can see here we have data, and then we're using a colon to tell the system we're chaining statements. When we chain statements, we have our declaration here, our num1 variable, but then instead of a period, we use the comma, and then we can specify our second statement. Once we're finished listing all the statements down, we terminate our chained statement with the period at the end.